Welcome to our participants. We'll be starting in a few minutes.
Good morning. I'd like to welcome all of our participants for today's symposium. We hope that you're able to enjoy a good time with us this morning, and it's going to be a great meeting. My name is Chuck Lenhart, and I'm President and CEO of the Ogden-Weber Chamber of Commerce. And about 5 years ago, we had a brainstorm with Weber State University and the Chamber. We came together to try and create something that was special for Northern Utah, to talk about business and all the different facets that business has and how it works for our particular economy. And as we brainstormed, we came up with this symposium. And so for the past 5 years, we've had a wide variety of different topics. And this one is going to be special. We're so happy to have Tim and Diana with us. And this particular event, we've been working together, Matt Moritzen, the Dean of the Goddard School of Business and Economics, and I, to help develop something that we think is pertinent to today's circumstances. In order to get here, though, we need to recognize some of the leaders and organizations that have made it possible. They've joined together in a vision of what this symposium could be and to help Northern Utah prosper. And I guarantee you, we don't take this lightly, these organizations that are sponsors. And I'd like to share a slide with you, if I can, that is representative of what those organizations mean to us. We have a tremendous amount of support that have come with those organizations. And I'd like to just recognize them by individual name because they are some of the organizations that support us as a community in large. America First Credit Union, Bank of Utah, Business Depot Ogden, Big D Construction, Standard Examiner, and Wells Fargo. In addition to those fabulous companies, we also have two great organizations that help lead our government today, and that's Ogden City and Weber County. And without these, this united effort, things like this just can't happen. And we just appreciate all that they have been doing for our community during this time. For today's event, we would like to ask you to participate. And as you listen to these two presenters, if you would jot your questions down at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A function. And if you would type your question into that box in that function, we will gather those questions throughout the course of the event. So you can write those questions down anytime. And then Matt will gather those and he will facilitate that question and answer at the completion of when Tim and Diana are finished with their presentations. So at this time, I'd like to introduce our moderator for today's event, A good friend of mine, Mr. Matt Moritson, Dean of the Goddard School of Business and Economics. He will be introducing our presenters and moderating the rest of the event today. Matt, it's great to be with you this morning. Thanks for all that you do, your leadership that you've been able to take place with the Goddard School and up at Weber State. Thank you so much, and we'll turn the time over to you.
Thank you, Chuck. I've been looking forward to this event for quite a while. I think we're hitting on a topic that is so relevant, and we've got two really great speakers to join us. The Goddard School appreciates its relationship with the Ogden-Weber Chamber of Commerce. This event is a highlight of our fall and our spring, and we feel at the Goddard School like it's important for us to engage with our local community, and New Biz affords us a very meaningful venue to interact. I too am grateful for Tim Border and Diana George for taking time to inform Northern Utah and the audience today on how to adapt to the changing environment in terms of sales and business development cycles. So let me introduce our two speakers today, and we'll first hear from Tim, and then we'll turn the time to Diana. And following both of their presentations, then we'll have a Q&A session. Tim Border is an associate professor and has taught in the Department of Professional Sales at Weber State University since 1992. He currently teaches fundamental selling techniques, customer service, contract sales and negotiation, sales personalities and profiles, and principle-centered selling. He has a master's degree in oral communication with an emphasis in training and development. Over the last 25 years, Tim has consulted with many Fortune 500 companies and government agencies throughout the world in the area of sales, customer service, and leadership. He's also owned several successful businesses and has extensive field experience in sales and negotiations. Tim is called upon frequently to represent Weber State. A few years ago, I witnessed his stage presence in action as he co-hosted Weber State's annual Crystal Crest Award ceremony. So thank you, Tim, for lending your expertise today. Before I turn it over to you, let me introduce Diana George. Diana is a financial professional who has spent 25 years in banking. Most of her time is spent on capital structure and mitigating risk with her clients' balance sheets through planning. Diana focuses on business owners, women in transition, and nonprofit work. Diana currently serves as a board member of the Salt Lake Estate Planning Council and as a member of the Goddard School's Business Advisory Council. She has an MBA from Colorado State University and a Master's of Taxation from Weber State. Diana is married to Paul, who is a firefighter and a captain for South Davis Metro Fire. Paul and Diana reside in Centerville and are the parents of 3 kids and the owner of a Rhodesian Ridgeback named Gus. That is not a dragon, that's actually a dog. I'll add that in her role in the Goddard School's Business Advisory Council, Diana has been extremely instrumental in providing input on our strategies that reflect market realities. We're grateful for her contributions. So Tim, take it away, it's all yours.
Thanks, Matt. Hi, everybody. I am at Weber State University in the oldest building on campus, the Technical Education Building. And I wanted you to see what it looks like here at Weber State. And I'll put this back. But I thought it would be nostalgic. I thought it would be my last lecture. 2 weeks from now, this building will be torn down. And I've taught in this room for years and years and years. So I couldn't think of a better way to go out. And thanks for being the type of people who would be involved in this symposium. Although I wish we were face to face, I feed off of people's energy. And I love working working with people who have a desire to grow and progress and move forward. So with that, I know we're going to get to our theme here in a second, adapting with that always changing cycle. I thought we'd have a little bit of fun. And so with that, I'll show you something I do with my students every day in the classroom. A $1 bill. Now this is going to stay in the screen view the whole time, and I'll roll my sleeves up. I have a $1 bill. I'm going to fold it into a small square, just like this. And I'm going to say the magic words, Cretus quod hoppus et hoppus, and that $1 bill turns into a $100 bill. Now, if you were here live, I know you'd be giving me an applause. I know that you would be saying, wow, If this is going to be a magic show, let's do more. So I'm imagining all the energy that's coming back. I have a philosophy. I want to share it with you. And I don't know if you can see behind me. I've got the bell curve. I've got the bell curve because I believe there's two types of people. Even though most people sit here in the middle, I believe there's two types of people, and you're either on one side or the other. There's the type of people who are very focused, aware, intentional, moving in the direction that they choose. And then there's the people living in the world of illusion. I often describe this as the Alice in Wonderland effect. Remember Alice? She was running down the path in that world of illusion, and she comes to the road that diverged, and she says to the cat, well, which way should I go? And the cat said, well, where are you going? And she said, I don't know. And then the cat said, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you to where I don't know where I'm going. Every day in my classroom, every day, we spend just a little bit of time at the beginning of a class discussing some of the illusions in life, some of the illusions in life that take us off course. Some of those illusions show up under fear. Fear is one of the grand illusions. There are many illusions that are based in fear. We've got negativity, and the world has many biases when it comes to negativity. We have time. I love discussing time as an illusion because time is a two-edged illusion. You've got procrastination, those people that are saying, I'll do it tomorrow, and then you have, I don't have time to do this. And it's so interesting that often people who are falling into that illusion of time will use both. They'll say, I'll do it tomorrow, and then those people say, I don't have time to do it. You know, and the list goes on and on. We literally brainstorm hundreds of illusions every semester, and then work through some of the solutions. Because I believe if you're caught in that world of I don't even know, I don't know, it keeps you on the left side of the curve. And so we usually throw an illusion of the day up on the board. I do a magic trick, which I know is kind of gimmicky, but the magic trick gets people to think, wow, how did he do that? My mind was certainly deceived, misdirected, and taken away from what was real. And if it can happen just like that, then we have to be aware of the illusions that are impacting us on a daily basis. Now, why I'm so passionate about this philosophy. When I was a kid growing up in the Chicagoland area, I ended up in a youth program for at-risk youth. I spent about a year and a half there. Now, it wasn't for anything violent. You don't have to worry about that. But I had a chip on my shoulder. I was full of fear and negativity. And my counselor, her name was Rose, brought me into her office, and she knew I was struggling. I wanted to go home, and she knew I was negative because I was telling her, this place is the worst place. This place sucks. I hate it here. And she said, Tim, I know the direction you're moving in just by the way you communicate. Your words are an indicator of what you've been thinking. And if you're thinking it and you're speaking it, it's more than likely going to start taking place. And she gave me 3 principles that I'm going to share with you. 3 principles that help me expose the illusions and create the real magic in life. And these principles have served me well, and they will actually tie beautifully into our theme of adapting into this always changing world of business and cycles. So one of my students once asked me in the class, well, how do I know? How do I know I'm caught in the world of illusion? If I don't know, I don't know. If I'm being deceived, how do I know? And I asked this student, do you drive your car to work every single day without looking at this? And when the indicator says it's empty, you go into this beautiful problem-solving mode. Do I have the time? Do I have the cash? Do I have the directions to where I can get out of that situation that will have a consequence if I don't do something about it? So you teach yourself at a very young age when you're starting to drive your car to pay attention to those indicators. How come you don't have those indicators in your life? We have them in our car. How come we don't have them in our physical health, in our business, in our finance, in our spirituality, in our emotions? And the list goes on and on. If we have them in our car and they help us make good decisions, Why don't we have these indicators in our life? And oftentimes I'll tell my students to watch the indicators that you're in the world of illusion. Here's just a couple of those indicators. A couple of those indicators are usually you're emotionally twisted. You're not always feeling the best. You don't have that calm, that peace, that confidence. You don't have that energy, that positivity. And oftentimes people get caught up in the world of emotional turmoil. And that's one of the big indicators that you're caught in the world of illusion. Another indicator is that you're not setting goals and you're not diving in to a continuous learning mindset where you're going out and figuring out how to get to where you want to go. And obviously, you're not measuring. I don't think people over here in the world of illusion are measuring anything. They're in that winging it mentality. And oftentimes people will succeed temporarily, but they don't know how they got there. They don't know how to duplicate it. And so here are 3 indicators that my counselor Rose gave to me when I was in that youth program that has served me well. 3 indicators that will help us, and I'll put them in on the focus side of things. Indicator number 1. And vision encompasses many things. Vision encompasses where am I at right now, and understanding where I'm at right now is huge. If I were to blindfold you and take you to somewhere in the world and say, now get home, you couldn't do anything until you found out where you're at right now. So you'd have to understand where am I at right now, and then set your target to where you want to go. And that target only has power, in my opinion, if it's got a purpose and it's got a meaning to it. When you have a purpose and a meaning, there's relevance to your vision. It drives you. It gives you the motivation to work at it. I think sometimes goals are cold if they don't have relevance, if they don't have the power of purpose. So number 1 is vision. Oftentimes people think they have vision, but I don't think you have a vision. I don't think you have a clear-cut vision if it's not written down, if it's not broken down into small bite-sized chunks. So I think it's vitally important to be able to have a vision that you can break down into small bite-sized chunks. Number 2, insight. If vision is the what and the why, insight is the how. And I believe that when Rose was helping me understand, she came to me one day and she goes, you're going to college. I said, I couldn't even get out of high school. She goes, you're going to college. She goes, you're going to Weber State University in Utah. And I said, this isn't for me. She goes, no, you're going. She had a bigger vision than I did, but she knew the power of insight. She knew in this youth program that if I could qualify for this scholarship that the U.S. government and Weber State University were combining together to help kids like me, she knew I could probably get out of my world of illusion. And so she encouraged me to fill out the paperwork and enroll and get involved, because she knew that if I had the how am I going to get there, if she knew this knowledge would be truly power. The third one is personal accountability. And I'll abbreviate so we don't run into a time crunch, but personal accountability is that measurable component. It's a little further today, measurably, than I was yesterday. And being able to evaluate it and push for a little further tomorrow than I am today. Rose taught me that these 3 principles, when synergistically used in my life, would have a huge impact. And it certainly did. I remember getting out of that youth program and I started working for a company selling water treatment systems. And I was selling door to door. And I started breaking down my sales cycle into, okay, where am I at right now? And how good do I need to be in my approach? And then what approach is out there? What insight, what approaches out there are there that I can sink my teeth into and experiment with? And then when I get out there, how effective were my approaches? And by using those same principles that helped me move from that youth program into Weber State University and selling door to door, I became the top salesman of Superior Water Company. Now here's a kind of a cool piece to that story. Several years later, using those same principles, I became a partial owner of Superior Water Company, from manager to leader to executive leader. And I'm not patting myself on the back, because I would never have been there if it wasn't for the power principles that help me stay focused and help me move in a positive direction. So let's dive into our theme today. Adapting to the always changing cycles in our life, in our world, personally and professionally. I might tilt this over here just a little bit so you can see the sales cycle. And this is something that I teach in my fundamental selling class. We've got what we call the basic 8: product industry knowledge, prospecting, qualifying, the pre-approach and approach, needs identification, the presentation or the demonstration, overcoming objection, gaining commitment or the close, and customer service. The fundamental principles of the basic 8. We're living in a day and age where this is changing every single day at a rapid pace. Now more than ever, we're dealing with changes to the way we approach people, the way we present to people. And I believe that we will not return from the situation we're in today to a world exactly the way we left it. And it's going to require that we take the principles that will help us move through change, the principles that will help us measure effectiveness, and apply them to what our world looks like today. And to pivot, and to be flexible, and to move in a direction that is new and improved. And so I wanted to break this down just a little bit for you. This is much like the mind mapping model. Let's take a look at our prospecting and qualifying. And if we were to come out here and take a look at some of the methods in which we're using today and break those down into small bite-sized chunks. Some of you are working with social media, LinkedIn, other types of things right now that are helping us stay off of the airplanes and away from the door-to-door, business-to-business models of the past. And you're adapting to a virtual world. And the question is how do we know we're being effective in that principle? Well, the question is, how are we measuring it? What are the ratios? How are we breaking it down into something measurable? And I believe, once again, it goes through this little 4-step process. Be aware of where we're at, identify where we want to go, immerse ourselves in a synergistic team of people who can provide us that insight, and then measure how far we went today. And if we didn't go as far as we want, we go back to the drawing board and we start over and we start figuring out how to see movement, how to see measurement. I want to share just a couple of examples. 2 students of mine at Weber State who grasped the concept of exposing the illusion and creating the magic have gone on as entrepreneurs and done very, very well. Matt Flanders, I'll share his story really quick. He actually moved from Utah to Ohio and started a company called GreenX. I went out and started working with him on the first year of business. He had 6 sales reps. Every day we sat and broke down his sales cycle. We started taking a look at how they prospect and how they ask needs identifying questions and how they do this in a very, very fast way so they can move into the presentation and demonstration, because this sales cycle that they were involved in was about a 15-minute sales cycle, a very, very fast sales cycle. But because we took a very scientific approach at it, and we started breaking it down into small bite-sized chunks, in 5 years, Matt Flanders moved from 6 reps to 600 reps today. 600 reps nationwide. Now, every day, this organization stays dialed in to the 3 principles that we're talking about. Where am I at? How am I going to get to where I want to go? And what am I doing measurably to make those changes? They have adapted a ratio-driven success model using 3 very, very solid principles of business. Now, these principles will never change. Methods change. Methods change over time. But this sales cycle will not change. You will always need to know about your product and industry. You'll always need to be finding people. You'll always need to be approaching and identifying their needs and presenting and overcoming their objections and gaining commitment. Those are always going to be the same, but the methods in which we do it change. One more story. Brant Thurgood, a student here at Weber State University, went on to start a virtual office company called Jill's Office. Jill's Office subcontracts with a lot of organizations, small businesses that don't have the money or means to have a secretary and an office staff. So they go in and meet that need by providing these small businesses like contractors or consultants or real estate agents, and they go in and create a virtual office for these people, and it helps them improve their business and helps them maintain a customer communication that they would not be able to do otherwise. So Brant said, as we started brainstorming, how do we take this to the next level? How do we get to the point where we're looking at your sales cycle, we're looking at an area that you feel like you need to improve, and then focus on that and gain the insight and be measurable? One area that Brant focused on was this needs identification. He realized that, and he had his virtual assistants have a questionnaire where every time they talked to a client, they would write down the needs of the client. They would write down some of their challenges. They would write down and get involved in their life. And they found that about 20% of their business offerings were not being utilized and they didn't care about. And so they scrapped it and focused on the 80%. And within 2 years' time, grew 160% in their business. Now, I love stories like this, and they continue to go on and on and on. But what I want to share with you today is this. I want to share with you that the cycles in business and sales, they're going to change, and we need to adapt. And we need to understand, where are we at right now? And then we need to create a target to where we want to go and how we're going to, and then discover how we're going to get there, and then start a scientific, almost experiment on how we moved. How did the gauge move? Did the needle move? And so my challenge is this, and Matt, do me a favor. Sorry about this. I meant to set my timer. Where are we at on our time really quick?
Tim, you got 10 minutes.
Okay, perfect.
Looking good.
I started sweating it a little bit, all right? Because I got into my mode. So that makes me feel good. And maybe I'll just check this really quick. Perfect. All right. So the challenge in adapting to the always changing cycles, environments of our business, the challenge is, if you could, within the next day or two, take an inventory of your sales cycle, of your business cycle, take a look at it, and based on some of the changes that we've been seeing of late, what's showing up as, we'll never do business like that again, or we're going to need to adapt and make some changes. I want you to take an inventory maybe of the basic 8. If you're involved in sales, and I'm speaking to the people involved in sales, if you're involved in sales, I want you to take a look at the basic 8 and take an inventory on what's changing in that cycle. And from there, I want you to put together some goals and targets. Some goals and targets that you can only reach if you develop a team of experts, a mastermind team, and include other people and tackle some of these challenges that you're facing with a team that will generate and create insight that will help us break through that illusion of, oh, we can just continue on as normal and we don't need to make change. And then what methods are you going to use to measure it? And there's some amazing tools out there today that would help us measure the ratio and help us measure our effectiveness. And so exposing the illusions and creating the magic is a mantra that I live by every day. In fact, maybe it would be a good point in time, if you're nodding off, that I will do one more illusion for you before I wrap up. One more illusion, and here we go. All right, we've got 2 coins. We've got an English pence, known as a penny. It's a copper coin, and we've got the US 50-cent piece. They're about the same size. They're about the same size. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to slip them together and hide each other from the back and roll them around just a couple times and watch it turn into a euro. That's a $2 piece, and this is our 50-cent piece. Right before your eyes, I was able to drop the pence down on the table, slip it in behind the 50-cent piece, and do it without you detecting. Now, my students oftentimes will say, hey, we really don't care about your lecture, just teach us how to do the magic trick so we can like hustle our friends out of lunch money. But it's an illusion, it's a trick, there's a gimmick to it. And there's not a magician alive that would let you look through their coat, not a magician alive that would let you look in the hat, because they want to keep it an illusion. They want to keep it a mystery. And frankly, in the name of entertainment, that's good. In the name of entertainment, that's okay. But in our life, in our world, where some of these illusions here get in the way, we need to be aware of them. We need to make the changes so that we don't break down on the side of the road. And we need to be able to, we need to be able to measure our effectiveness in doing so. I don't know if people sometimes think about that. I don't know if they ever think about, what is it that's holding me back? What's clouding my view, my thinking, my actions? So the challenge goes out. The challenge, what are we doing to adapt? What are we doing to pivot? What are we doing to be flexible? Because frankly, things are going to change, and we need to be ahead of the curve, and we need to do it in a way that's scientific. There's a reason why they're called researchers, because they keep searching, they keep looking, and when they don't find it, they search again. They go back to the drawing board. So the researchers are interested in measurable improvement so that they can move forward. Be a researcher in what you do. Expose the illusions that hold us back and create the magic of adaptation to our ever-changing world. I appreciate the time to take with you today. I look forward to answering some questions. I believe that the people that would be coming to this symposium are the type of people that want to grow, that want to progress, that want to improve. So with that, my friends, expose the illusions and create the magic. Thanks very much.
Tim, thank you. Sure appreciate that. That was insightful. I think we'll get some questions. I know I have a couple that have come to mind. So a message to our attendees out there: we are recording this session, and it will be made available by the chamber. As you think of questions, use the Q&A feature. Those of you that have joined us a little bit late, I know that there are some that are still trying to get past a password, and we're resolving that on our side. But we appreciate those of you that have been participating, and I want to turn the time now from Tim's remarks to Diana, and let her spend some time talking about how to adapt the business development cycle to our changing environment. So Diana, we'll turn it over to you, and you can go until about 5 minutes after 10 or thereabouts. And then we'll turn into the Q&A portion of our meeting. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you. And good morning, everyone. Thanks for allowing me to be with you this morning. I hope everyone's safe and well. As I look to prepare some information, it will dovetail quite a lot from Tim's conversation. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I prepared a PowerPoint for everybody. So tight. So as we have all experienced the last 8 weeks, there's a lot of change and momentum that's taken place, if not daily, definitely hourly. Being in finance has been an interesting time where we are experiencing lows of lows that have happened recently, but not, it's been a long time since we've had such the deep lows. Anyway, as I thought about what to share with you guys, the thing that I want to share, or what I would want you to take away most today, is early on in my career, I was taught I was in the people business. I just happened to be in finance. And so as I was looking for the philosophies, Howard Bear, he's the Starbucks CEO, he also was quoted, "We're in the people business serving coffee, not coffee business serving people." And so I think Starbucks is a great example of developing their business by creating an atmosphere that people would want to come to. From the wiring of the building to creating a comfortable space to spend a lot of time for those searching for an environment to do so. So as we look to what business development is, I found a really great description of it where strategic business activities really reflect the business development. So assuming that the business has had their business plan created, they understand the solution they're providing, what the problem is specifically, and why people would care about their solution. They've identified an audience or a market for that. So strategic planning activities are the business development activities. It's what's fulfilling those growth and revenue models that are going to keep the business relevant and or what it looks like in, you know, a year from now to 5 years from now to 20 years from now. So most of the time, business development needs to be reflective of not only the strategy, but they need to be very apparent with the tactical applications. So everything you heard from Tim, these activities need to reflect all of those sales processes and complement the strategy of the business. So leaders and executives or senior members of the team need to be able to do both. They need to be able to have the strategic abilities as well as apply the tactical applications of that. One of those things in my world is being very transparent and high-touch communication, no surprises. So have a core business knowledge, understand your market, and a lot of the time it's understanding your competition. I think it's very important, like Tim had mentioned several times, be a researcher, take it as an experiment, scientific model. Data analysis has its time and place, and it helps direct you to be more efficient. So for me, I'm constantly learning and trying to understand the audience, understand the market, understand those changes and challenges, but also what's going to be relevant in 20 years from now, so that I can constantly be learning what is coming next. So ultimately, the goal is how to create value. This is important because it's very time sensitive. Cash is king. Coming from my world, I'm a cash flow guru. You have to understand what the growth is and what the risk comes, but you have to make sure that it's profitable. I think it needs to be profitable both for yourself and the client. Understand if the business is going to be able to make payment at the end of it, but I think it's also important to understand the challenges that may come with the servicing of it. So understand if they're going to be a great collaborative partner and customer, or understand if there's risk that could come to breach that ability to collaborate. So ultimately, when you're doing this right, and all of those activities and conversations, it's how do you create the stakeholder value? And I think it's interesting because all of the activities and current conversations that I've been a part of, it's reinforcing not only doing what's right for founders or investors, but I think it's also do what's right for our employees and our customers and our communities. Right now we're in a time where we're in a health crisis and we're all on the same side as humans, and taking care of each other cannot be valued enough. So as you look to develop business, I think the internal client and the external clients are very different. Culture is key. I think for those businesses or for those that have been doing it where the humanistic nature has been key, I think you have to be very intentional. So when you look to gather those partners or those collaborators around you, be very intentional that this is part of the plan. So one of the things that you should consider, or as I have conversations with people, is look to see if they're happy, look to see what their overall goals and objectives are. If those individuals are just looking for a paycheck or for a number, I think it filters and weeds those out very quickly. So baked in mojo as a competitive advantage. This is reflecting the culture activities. I think it's really important if you're a leader or a senior member, or even just a member of the team, it's very holistic. You need to recognize the range of choice and the range of activities that go into functioning the business each day. So it's really important to resist pressures that can come with that. I think people will get in a hurry and feel the time sensitivity of bringing on the right talent with the culture. But sometimes it's far better to slow down, to make the better choices and the right choices so that mistakes aren't made. And it does take time to cultivate relationships. So I know for myself, with recent activities for me, when I started to look for an opportunity to become part of a different team, it took me about 6 months for me to cultivate the relationship, but it was also being cultivated on the other side. So I find that this is becoming more and more of an activity that people are requiring, not only for the internal employees, but also as I have conversations with potential clients and prospects, they're doing their due diligence as much as I am. So also, it's very important to consider what is going to be valid 100 years from now. So I know I was just reviewing some information from some of my MBA coursework, and there was a Harvard professor, and Tim and I were actually just talking about this, where, you know, the leadership in 2020 and being an expert in your field and being part of a dynamic group that can make complex things simple is going to be vital. So with that, the external side of things is know your customer. And then I stated it 3 times. I don't think that this could be valued enough. The customer these days are super smart. I mean, we've got Google, they're going to self-diagnose, they're going to try and do it themselves, and they've done their research. And so I think it's very important to not only understand the target market that you can address, but then it filters down into a funnel. So you can start with a large audience, and then you need to determine what's serviceable. And I think this is reflecting what Tim was often mentioning, to measure. It's important to have a goal, but you need to have a measurable goal. And then it filters down even further into what is your addressable market. And so this could be as simple as addressing a local presence before you try to do multi-state and or national. And so understand where you're at and where you can be able to take advantage of the time sensitivity, the time sensitivity of your growth model. So the foundations with that is truly being the expert. I think when you look to be the expert, this reflects the characteristics of the individual. So I liked that the illusion and then the awareness. And so know what you know, but I think it's really important to know what you don't know. This allows you to either determine if you've got the right members on the team and or gaps that are missing on your team. And so for solutions for clients, it's also going to be that same analysis, or you would hope it to be, that you're going to be the gap that's missing in their current business model. So it's very important to be resource driven. So some of you may be thinking, what do I do? I'm at home, I'm working here, how do I prospect? Or how am I going to drive business when I can't go and do things directly with people face to face? I'm in a field where it's very much face-to-face driven. So for me, it's how do I help give resource and content for people? So the ultimate goal for myself is, knowledge is key, and how do I empower more information to clients so that they're able to be empowered with the information specifically, so they're making the best decisions possible for themselves and their businesses and or their families. So I think with the expert information, there's a quote that I wanted to share with you, and it was, when you're looking at being an expert, it's a lot like chess. And so for those of you who've ever played chess, I play it with my boys all the time, and I lose, but you have to be constantly thinking of what the next move would be. And so that would be the same as considering what is the next move, or what is the next need for the clients. And so I think it's really important to go back to what's going to be relevant in 100 years, let alone what's going to be relevant in 5 years. So it will allow you to constantly be inspecting the expectation. I think, the old fake it till you make it, I think people will definitely call you out on that. It doesn't work anymore. You have to be very authentic and genuine and sincere. People will know if you know it. They'll know if you don't. They will definitely call you out on it. If you've been doing this, I think for the people side of it, if you've been doing this and you've taken care of people, what has been working will continue to work. It reinforces the principles. Something that also Tim had stated on, principles never change. The 3 C's, this is something that's very, we talk a lot about this within my network and within my leadership team. So we're in a time where communication is key, and being consistent with that communication and having compassion. So I have a lot of single clients right now. They live by themselves. They can't go and visit other people. They can't go be part of their hobbies, whether it's going to the gym or a Pilates class. And so a lot of mental wellness is an issue. And I think it's a great time to just pick up the phone and say, how are you doing? And the other is just slowing down. For me, there's a lot of changes going on in the market with finance and different agenda items that are coming out. And so for me, I have to be very thorough in what I read and what I digest and what I know. And then I need to be able to turn around and make that a very simple message for the client. And so I think it's just a reminder to start off each day with intention and be aware. And then if you're aware of yourself, that allows you to be aware of others and take time to know your customer and consider what's going on with them. So the best practices is do understand the business. This goes back to understand your business and understand your competitors. And then drill down and understand the customers and understand what they may or may not be experiencing right now. I think I can't say it enough is, we don't really understand what's going on with others unless we're actually within their own shoes. And so be very consistent with your communication and outreach and authentic and genuine. I think it's really important to know how to make a profit. I think sometimes where, especially cash flow right now, it might be more appropriate to say no to some business than say yes. Be very diligent in how your profit will be successful and not be eroded within a client transaction. Downside risks and contingency plans. I think business continuity, that's definitely been tested. So those businesses that have been prepared have been able to weather maybe those rather than those who hadn't been prepared. I think, the best advice in business is run the business with or without you in it. And so for maybe those of you who are business owners or senior leaders, I learned a long time ago, the best thing I can do is replace myself sooner than later. I've done a good job if I found somebody who can come in and do it better than I. And then of course, what's in it for the customer. And then I wrap up a little bit early, Matt. So I wanted to just end with reinforcing, don't tell clients what you know. Tell them what they want to hear. I think we have a lot of knowledge. A lot of us have gathered a lot of tools and information along the way. But I think it's really important to step back, take your time, understand the client. They're looking for a safe, trusted place right now. And most of them just want to be heard. So if you can create an environment that's quiet, allows them to talk and allows you to listen and truly listen, it'll enable you to fill in those blanks or have the opportunities to provide solutions. Because I think right now, a lot of fear, a lot of the unknown is very much on most of our minds. And so clients are looking for that safe, trusted place to have a conversation. And a lot of that's going to be service driven. So I think they're listening. They're 100 times more aware of conversation. And they're going to be paying attention to how you're serving before they give you the opportunity to maybe be that solution provider. So with that, Matt, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you.
Diana, thank you so much. You've given us a lot to think about. Both you and Tim have. A few questions have started to come in. I think this gives us some ample time to explore in a little more depth, even with our audience. So I'm going to fire away a question, and it may come in two parts. It's building on what you both talked about, illusions and uncertainty. And each of you had such a unique take on that it certainly got my mind thinking. One attendee asked this question. Their customers, our customers, have had to be agile in the delivery of their products and services the past few months. How can our attendees, how do we identify the successful ways our customers and partners might change the way they engage with us in the future? It's not business as usual. So how will they adapt to engaging with you in the sales and business development cycle? Maybe I'll go to Diana with that one, and then back to Tim.
Well, my first thought is picking up the phone and having that conversation with the service provider. You know, what exactly is going on? What have you learned? And this is where research will be key. I think getting up to speed as much as the client is by understanding what specific needs are coming about. Tim, I don't know, what do you have?
So I wanted to clarify just a little bit. So was the question, how do we respond better to our customers' needs, or how do we communicate with those providing the service? I just wanted clarification on that, Matt.
Yeah, just to be specific. So they've had to be agile in how they're delivering what they deliver. So how do we identify the successful ways in which customers and partners might change the way they engage with us?
Right. So one thing that came to my mind is anticipate that. Anticipate that there's going to be a change in the way they communicate and interact with us, and then make it easy, or try to make it easier. I know that if you provide a way for somebody to do something, it's a lot easier to do it. I'll give you an example of that. If you were to be at a kiosk in which they're asking for some feedback, it's a lot easier to just answer one or two questions on how the service is going than say, hey, would you mind sending us a letter on how our customer service is being responded to? So we've got to make it easier for people to provide us feedback and to communicate. And so if there's some ways that we could look at how are we communicating now, and how can we make it easier for them to be able to provide us feedback. And I think by doing that, you'll open up some channels of communication that will help people make appropriate changes.
Okay, I think those are good responses. Make it easy for them. They may have an illusion. They may be uncertain about how they can interact with you. And I'll follow up on that by saying, not only have they been agile in their delivery, but they may need from you uniquely designed products and services. So how do you communicate? How do you get them to communicate with you in such a way that they can express those needs, that they can define their requirements when they may not even be fully aware of what they are in this changing environment?
Yeah, and I can't reinforce enough of just picking up the phone and having a direct conversation. People are appreciating the good old-fashioned phone call, and or a lot of them are wanting a webinar. They want to see you face to face. And so making it simple with communication being very prudent.
And Brent Thurgood, when I mentioned the Jill's office example, did just that. They reviewed with their clients the services that we feel like we're providing you, and wanted their feedback and asked if are we on the mark, are we meeting or exceeding expectations. And they found that 20% of their offerings that they were putting effort into, the customer didn't care about. And so they pulled that off the table and dealt with the things that the customer did. And that took place because it was an intentional effort to have a dialogue, a very good dialogue with the client. I have another example of somebody who does the same thing, where their goal when interacting with their customer is not just to say, hey, how you doing? Is everything good? Which is kind of a weak approach. But their goal is that this conversation is going to generate something that will improve our relationship, something that will improve our delivery, our product, our communication, making it even easier. But before I stop communicating with you today or throughout the week or month, we are going to improve a process. We are going to improve a system. And this company does very, very well because their goal is we have to not just understand that we're meeting needs, but that we're actually involved in helping them grow and improve in their businesses.
Yeah.
Excellent responses. Diana, if you could share your last slide again on the quote. We had a question that would like to follow up on that.
Okay.
And here's the comment and the question. Diana's final quote made me think about the negative of telling people what they want to hear. Often this is reflective in a salesperson not being genuine, just responding to close the sale. The end of the quote may be, find out what the client needs, then tell them what they want to hear in regard to meeting those needs. And do you have any additional insights on this, both of you?
Yeah, I think, with Tim's last comments, it's be the expert. And oftentimes we forget we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So absolutely, I think you need to allow the customer to share what's going on so that you can identify solutions that are applicable. And I couldn't agree more. Sometimes the salespeople just want to shove things down the throat of a client just to get it all out there. And then they wait for the client to respond versus let the client engage and interact and then provide solutions. Absolutely.
I'm glad there was clarification on that quote because I think it could be misunderstood. When you look at it from the lens of a customer doesn't want to hear, no, we can't do that. And a customer doesn't want to hear you go into every detail sometimes that takes too much time away from their productivity. But I think when you say, this is what I can do, or what if I could do this, then you're coming at, I know you're coming at it semantically, but the customer doesn't want to hear, no, sorry, we can't do that. And so I think if our paradigm shift would be, okay, what does our customer want to hear? And we're trying to meet those needs. I don't think it's a form of manipulation at that point. I think it's a form of we're in touch with what they want, and maybe you could do some clarifying behind that. But that's the way I anticipated, or I mean, that's the way I interpreted that quote is they don't want to hear no, they want to hear this is what we can do, or what if we could do this?
Right. Well, and I think too, oftentimes clients want to know, I think you'll build a better trusted relationship if you tell them you can't or you don't know, and that you'll get back to them. I think too, it's also making sure you can identify barriers. Oftentimes people get caught up in the conversations of goals and objectives, but they're not taking time to really identify the problems and the barriers that exist to be able to be successful in those goals and objectives. And so I often, I mean, for a handful of people, I label myself sometimes as the fun sucker because I'm gonna be genuine and authentic, because if you don't identify the issues and the problems and nobody's taking time to just call it out for what it is, that also can create future problems that are just unfortunate for everybody who's been engaged in the transaction.
Both of you have given me some food for thought here. I think about a running theme in our MBA program. It's based on the psychological science of trust, which boils down to 3 elements. One is we build trust personally as well as organizationally through our capabilities. We're just good at what we do. The second is through benevolence or compassion, how we treat customers, employees, the environment, etc. And the third is our integrity, the character of the organization. And so when I looked at your quote, I thought, if trust is present because they trust our capabilities, they trust who we are, then when we tell them what they want to hear, they know that's coming from a genuine place. But let's face it, in the current environment, capabilities are being tested at new levels. Our compassion and our integrity can even be tested like never before. And I wondered if you had any follow-up comments based on that trust model.
One thing that oh, sorry, Diane, I'll jump on this one really fast and then let you jump in. But one thing that I'd like to add to that, because I love that. Those are, everyone watching today should have grabbed those three concepts, because there's going to be some trust issues. There's going to be some disruption. I think one more piece to that would be when your customer, when your internal customer knows that you understand. And I once heard someone say that one of the greatest ways to show someone you respect them is to shut up and just listen to them. Ask good questions. Go a little bit deeper. Find out a little bit more. Oftentimes, by guiding your customers to a level of implication with their challenges, they will discover that you truly are trying to understand them at a deeper level. And so by asking questions that go a little bit further, instead of just jumping in and trying to solve the problem that you think you have it all figured out, if you were to go a little bit, tell me more about that. Can you shed some more light? What would be the implication if it continued to take place? And get to a level where they know you are not just listening, but you understand them. And you know you understand them because they are starting to understand a little bit better themselves just by asking some better questions.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think slowing down and truly understanding the customer, right? It's the Stephen Covey, seek to understand before you're understood. And listen, I think for the sales cycle, so as I've observed, either staff members or peers, they want to be that solution provider. They want to be the first one to the finish line to provide it to the client. And I think this reinforces what I was trying to message of just slow down. I think being the expert is vital right now, but if you're not an expert, you're going to have a hard time having the benevolence and the empathy and all of those other things that are far more important than the actual solution and content right now with those engagements.
Okay, excellent. We've got another question that's come in. I think it's a great question, especially as an educator. But I think this comes from a good place, and it has to do with skills and competencies. Let me set up the question this way, because it reminds me of a phrase. During an economic cycle of uncertainty, a down cycle, it can be bleak, it can be cold. And there's a phrase among chief financial officers called prune in winter. It means this is a time when we begin to reduce or stop the activities that are not effective. It's a chance to really look at what's not working, stop doing it. And as this cycle turns around, we've prepared ourselves by retooling for what will emerge. I realize there's a lot of uncertainty, but the question that's being asked is what skills or competencies, if any, should we retool right now to succeed in the new normal?
That's an amazing question that would probably be specific to everybody's situation. And I can think of many in the professional selling arena. I know for me, if I don't help prepare my students to deal in a virtual world today of selling, negotiations at one point in time usually always took place face to face. Today, 80 to 90% of negotiations is taking place virtually, over the phone, or through a tool that will help you to not have to travel or be belly to belly. If I'm not preparing my students for those type of environments, those skills, when they get into the world, are going to be like ice water thrown on their face. So I would think that the tools that in professional selling, that and the skills that we're mastering today, another good example would be a good CRM, one that would help capture numbers, one that would help us with ratios and help us to figure out graphically what we're doing wrong and how we can improve. But I truly believe that we need to adapt to this electronic era where everything is taking place like we're doing right now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think this time frame is also kind of, it dovetails into a current conversation that's very relevant with ESG, right? Environmental, social governance. And so a lot of these large investors or capital or access to capital for business, they're paying attention to the carbon footprint. So I cannot echo enough of what does business look like in the future, because people are paying attention if you're getting on an airplane and you're making a carbon footprint when maybe a webinar or video conference would have sufficed. And so I think that skill set and how can you do business in a manner that's a good stewardship model for everybody, right? For your clients, for the community, for the environment, and that you're governing those things. I think that's not only what's relevant today, but it's something that has been a current conversation for several years in the making. Kind of getting back to the basics, that stakeholder value.
Yeah, well said. Tim, you mentioned a CRM system, and I think to complement that, to use the data that's available, this might be a good time to learn some data visualization skills. Let the data of your process, of your clients, let it tell a story that maybe you can't see without the help of some data visualization tools. You know, learn Tableau, learn how to use the features in Excel that will tell a story. You might be surprised what you learn. And you know, there's that old saying we use in data, in IT, even in accounting, but in God we trust, all others bring data. And it's just, it's one of those things that can help tell the story when maybe you don't have the political capital, but the data does. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing I would recommend is get into data analysis. Okay,
well
excellent,
said. Well
excellent
said.
questions.
I believe that comment is truly, back to the metaphor of our dashboard in our car. We've all learned to pay attention to that. Our cars are so sophisticated with data. You take a look at the Tesla. You take a look at everyone's running GPS. I mean, our cars are providing us so much data, so much real-time data to help us make decisions so that we can move from point A to point B more effectively. So why we do this in our cars, but we don't do it in our lives, in our business, doesn't make sense.
That's right. So getting to specifics, a CRM system that there may be some favorites out there, and that's one question that's come in. Tim, Diana, what are the favorite CRM systems that you've seen? And it may vary by industry, but generally, what would your recommendations be?
So I'll just grab it because Tim probably will be a little bit more thorough, but I've been lucky enough to be part of focus groups where we created our own. But currently Salesforce is pretty predominant in many aspects in my industry.
Salesforce is king right now in sales. Although NetSuite is a very strong CRM, and many others. There's, again, we're starting to see customization to organizations. Some of these that are very expensive, that larger organizations pay millions of dollars to create a nice CRM for their team. There are customizations out there for a CRM to be as inexpensive as $60 to $100 a month for your small business or some of the things that you're trying to do at a much smaller scale. So I would research that, but many organizations today are using NetSuite and Salesforce.
Yeah, and I think it would be really vital to make sure your users, if you intend to have users in the CRM, don't underestimate the value of that resource internally to help you with the research specifically, but then it's super important to show them, not tell them to use it, so that they are very comfortable that, you know, it's the work smarter, not harder philosophy. Because what I've observed is there's a lot of expense and resource dumped into it, and there's not a lot of measurement and value extracted. So.
Yeah, well said. If you want to maximize, go ahead.
Sorry. Well, just one piece of advice for organizations that are using CRMs. Often the feedback that I get from some of the sales reps are the CRM is used to manipulate or to micromanage. And that's one of the downsides of a CRM. If you've got a manager that will throw the data at you and say you're not spending enough time on the phone or your closing ratios are poor, as opposed to going in and working with them as a mentor and a coach, using the data to help them, but not to micromanage.
Very well said. I think that reinforces governance, right? Make sure those tools and those intentions are to move business forward, not just enable, you know, personal agendas, for sure.
I will say this: if you're looking to adapt to a change in your CRM system, you've never had one in place, before you talk to anyone who represents the product, define your own requirements. Find out what works in your environment, what you need. Otherwise, we're talking about sales here. They're going to make a very compelling case for why their product works. You need to know why it will work, what's going to fit, have some priorities, create a weighted scoring model on what's important to you. Pretend you're hiring this CRM system, just like you would hire an employee, have criteria established before you go down the road of choosing a new system.
Yeah, and reinforcing the start to the end user process, right? That whole client experience happening internally and externally, so that you've got measurable goals and objectives that can be identified.
One attendee made an astute comment, said, if you don't know where to begin with defining your requirements, consider starting with user stories. Go talk to those who are in the trenches using this, and you may reveal what Tim talked about, what Diana's talked about with regard to effective utilization that matches your culture, or at least should match your culture. So really good questions there. I'm going to ask a question that maybe gets at something from a little different angle here, and that is being good at what you do versus being passionate about what you do. What works?
So I'm going to take this. So right now we're in a time where, you know, being resilient and being able to thrive under pressure, you don't get to just do that successfully without being very good and being very much in tune and an expert in your field. I think oftentimes, you know, it's nice to have passions, but there's a book that I have read. I don't know if many of you have heard about it, but it's Be So Good That They Can't Ignore You. And I think when you're really good at your job, that's what creates opportunities and passions to serve your clients. And I think for me, at the end of the day, when I'm doing what's right for the individual, because I've got the skill set to do so, it's a non-negotiable right now. You have to have the skill set. Passion left the door, day 3 and lock up in your house, right? So.
Great. That's a great response. Immediately what came to my mind was I was on a South American tour of some of the ruins, the pyramids and some of the ancient ruins. And we had a tour guide that was brilliant. He knew everything about everything, yet he had no passion. He was burned out. He was going through the motions. He could tell you about every single thing out there, but he didn't make it come to life. So I don't know if one trumps the other. I think maybe being good at what you do and being knowledgeable is an essential today. But if you don't make that come to life with a passionate connection and helping people feel it, coming from the world of sales, that's an important element too. And I don't know if I would choose one over the other. Hopefully you could blend both.
Excellent responses. Yeah, that's interesting. When you believe in what you do, it's sure easy to be passionate. I'll come at you with another question. Now, we've talked a lot about existing relationships and how to build them, how to provide really, really good service where maybe trust already exists. But let's go to the very beginning of a sales or business development cycle, and we need to form new relationships. And here we are in a pandemic. Things are tough, uncertainty, illusions exist. How do we create new relationships where trust has really not even a foundation yet?
Well, here we are. We're back to the prospecting question. We're back to the funnels and the sales cycles, and so this is an age-old question. How do we continue to grow and build new relationships? But it's even more emphasized today because the ways of doing that in the past have changed a little bit. I believe that we're going to have to capitalize on some social media. The social media of business is LinkedIn. I believe that we are going to have to learn how to be an expert in connecting virtually, and that's just one approach. I would hope that we could create systems in which our current clients could be incentivized to introduce us and refer us. I would think that we could come up with ways in which our advertising or marketing could be improved to attract and bring in some of those new relationships. But again, it goes back to where are we at right now? Where do we want to be? How are we going to get there? And what are we going to do today to see a measurable improvement and not just put our head in the sand and live in that world of illusion of, hey, it will all just blow over. This is the opportunity today to be truly ahead of the curve and be proactive.
Yeah, and I would agree. I mean, social media is really the tool that allows you to connect. And so for myself, it's, how do you serve and how do you provide resources right now? I think going back to people are paying attention. They're paying attention to what you do and how you do it. For me, it's how do I provide content that's relevant and intentional for the people that I am pursuing. So knowing those clients, knowing the market, know who I have access to, knowing who I can serve, and being very selective in that, because I think gone are the days that you can just spray a message to a whole audience, I mean, not that ever worked anyway, but I think you are definitely in a time frame where you need to identify those clients. You need to identify who those future customers are, and then do your homework and research them, understand them as much as you can. And for me, it's how do I access them? And personal introductions are key to that. I think trusted environment, and if you've got a trustworthy connection that can enable that to happen, then those opportunities present themselves. And then it just goes back to the conversation we've already had. Be quiet, listen, provide resource. Don't give away the farm, right? When you still have to eat the food, but you need to be very authentic and genuine to give them resources before you expect to ask the business.
Well said, both of you. I think about my response to this question. Over the last 6 weeks during the pandemic, I've gotten to work with 3 new entities in the education pipeline. And in all 3 cases, what's been revealed is a word called friction. And it hasn't come up today, but we've talked about it. And each of these potential partners has talked about friction in the process, and how can I, as a dean or in our business school, reduce the friction that they're experiencing in their current situation. And that's them expressing a need and hopefully trying our best to overcome that. And I just appreciate that we got to a point where they could reveal it to us. We are to the point where we need to conclude and turn the time back to Chuck. The last half hour has really flown by as we've had some Q&A. I can't thank Tim and Diana enough for their professionalism, their preparation. As Tim said earlier, it's really a lifetime of preparation that's led to the last hour and a half of learning how to adapt in this changing environment. And so Tim, Diana, thank you very, very much for all that you've done. And Chuck, we will turn it back to you.
Great, thanks so much, Matt. Tim, Diana, it's just been wonderful. It's been just a great morning to be with you. We're not going to let this discussion drop. Now more than ever, we feel that sales and business development are key to helping our economy get back on track. And so we're at a very crucial time in our nation, our world's history, and business development is going to help usher in the recovery of business. We have to be on our game. So we're not, as a chamber, we've been listening to what our members need, and we have a couple of meetings coming up, and I want to share one of those with you. This one is a particular great topic that we're going to explore. It's with our morning speaker series. So you should be able to see that on your screen right now. It's going to be with Rob Despain, who is the Vice President of Business Development with Peterson Inc. Rob is a lifelong Peterson employee, and he is responsible for millions of dollars worth of revenue that come into his organization. And we hope that you can come out and take this next step on this journey of business development with us. He's going to be speaking on relationships. We touched on that today, and that's what he's going to focus on, the key to effective business development through relationship. That's on Thursday, May the 7th. So that's coming up quick. It's 9 a.m. It's a virtual event, of course, and it's going to be free for all chamber members, so that we hope that you can get on and take a look at that. Again, America First Credit Union, thank you so much for being our sponsor of the Morning Speaker Series. In addition to that, we have another event that I want to share with you, which is right here, and that is our business during hours. We're going to take our business after hours format, and during this time, we're going to make it a business during hours. And as we start to recover and people start getting back into our restaurants, we'd like to shine a light on one of our great members, partner with us, Javier's Authentic Mexican Food. We're going to have a virtual networking over lunch. And we're going to have a variety of specials for chamber members who can take back to your home or your business, have lunch with us, and enjoy a virtual networking event. And we celebrate our restaurants here at the chamber. Thank you so much, Matt, Tim, Diana. It's been wonderful. And thanks to all of you who were able to attend with us today. Any final words, Matt?
No, I think it was a successful session. There are always technical issues. We hope to prevent those in the future if we can.
Then you'll be a magician, just like
yeah,
Tim.
That's right.
Hey, thanks.
Okay, bye-bye.